Hello there and welcome to this week's Deep Dive. My name's Honor Criswick, I'm a meteorologist and presenter here at the Met Office, and today is Tuesday, so of course it's Deep Dive Day. We bring you these videos every week, so welcome back if you do catch these videos where we bring them out every Tuesday. And if you're new, hello and welcome. Do make sure to subscribe to this channel if you like this video, and of course give it a like, give it a comment. We do try and read through the comments, not only after today, but we try and bring some of them up on our Weather Studio Live, which we do every Friday. And of course we bring you these videos every week. We've also got our 10-day trend tomorrow with Alex Burke-Hill if you want a longer range forecast. But for today, we are going to be talking about the weather this week. It's still fairly changeable. Of course, it's the first week of meteorological autumn. There's a fair amount of rain on its way, some quite heavy showers, and this morning we have issued a weather warning for rainfall across southern parts of England and Wales, with a chance we could see more as we head through the week. Not only that, but we're going to be taking a look at some summer stats. Although we're not going to go too far into the summer stats, we're actually going to bring you a special video tomorrow with more of a deep dive into the summer stats themselves. But nevertheless, we are still going to talk about them because, of course, this summer has been record-breaking. Not only that, but I do have a special guest because, of course, this week we have named our new storm names for this season. So we're going to be taking a look back at the storm season just gone. So I've got a special guest, Holly Clements, who is the head of warnings and guidance here at the Met Office. So there's loads still that we can talk about. So let's get going then. Of course, first week of meteorological autumn, and it certainly feels like it. It's been a little cooler and fresher compared to the end of summer, and already we've seen a decent amount of rainfall. And it's all due to what's currently happening with our jet stream, so the fast flowing ribbon of air high up in the atmosphere. And what you'll notice is what it's doing, if I just zoom out a little bit, it's a fairly wavy pattern just to the west of us out into the Atlantic. And what this often means with a more wavy jet stream is that we get more areas of development areas, they're actually called, and they tend to pick up areas of low pressure, which is what's happening currently at the moment as we head our way through Tuesday and into Wednesday. They pick up these areas of low pressure where we do tend to see divergence aloft, so air spreading apart aloft. It's quickly replaced by air at the surface, converging, moving upwards, and we tend to see these areas of low pressure deepen as a result. So they tend to bring wet and windy weather, and that's exactly what we're going to see later tonight through into Wednesday. And it's one of the reasons why the weather warning, which I'll go into in a moment, has been issued. So you can already see, if I just turn the jet stream off for now, you can already see an increase in the isobars here, particularly across southern parts of the UK. Not only this, but bringing in a frontal system, which is going to bring some quite heavy downpours through Tuesday night, through into the early hours of Wednesday. So this particularly across parts of the south and southwest, where we'll start to see rainfall totals begin to increase. But not only this, but you can see the rain is going to be quite widespread across the country on Wednesday. So unsettled for the middle part of the week. This will eventually drift its way through as we head through into Wednesday, and by Thursday behind it, winds will tend to ease a little bit, but notice we've just got this occlusion feature drifting across the south. So it's probably going to be a day of sunny spells, also showers, these perhaps merging into longer spells of rain where we see this occluded feature across parts of the south. Now the rain is quite needed. It's been very dry, hot spring. The rain is needed everywhere. Not only just showers dotted around, but we've needed persistent outbreaks of rain to move through. There's really dry ground at the moment. Still many areas in kind of drought conditions. So we do need that rain to move through. But if you're not a fan, I know not everyone is, and obviously it's the first week back from the summer holidays for many people. Well, we do have high pressure building to the south on Friday and also Saturday. So particularly southern parts of England and Wales, once again, mostly seeing quite a dry end to the week, perhaps quite a dry beginning of the weekend too. But once again, just low pressure there just to the south of Iceland, dragging in something towards the northwest of Scotland. So Friday is probably going to be quite a breezy day, and then eventually we'll start to see outbreaks of rain drift in from the northwest. But that high pressure sticking around for a time, which means mostly settled conditions Friday and Saturday across a large bulk of the country. But of course, waiting in the wings, once again, another area of low pressure. So it's likely we'll start to see this drift in later Saturday, early hours of Sunday, just starting to push into the west there. What I will say about Sunday is there's still quite a lot of uncertainty, still quite a lot of model difference. So do keep an eye on the forecast over the coming days. But it does look like Friday, Saturday, a bit more settled, a bit more sunshine around, and then another area of low pressure starting to move through. What's also interesting about Sunday is with this area of low pressure to the west moving in that anti-clockwise direction, it brings in a bit more of a southerly flow towards the country, particularly across parts of the south. And actually what you'll notice is it does drag in a little bit of warmer air from continental Europe for a time. So actually Sunday morning is probably going to feel quite pleasant for many areas through much of the day if this area of low pressure is fairly slow moving, particularly across East Anglia, parts of southeast England. It's probably going to be a quite pleasant day with quite warm temperatures, so seeing a hint that summer has returned, but I'm afraid it's not lasting with that low pressure eventually moving its way further eastwards and bringing in more cloud and rain. And into next week it looks like we'll see a fairly similar week with quite changeable conditions, ridges of high pressure and then also frontal systems moving through, bringing more outbreaks of rain. So a changeable week is a good way to sum it up, really. But of course, we do need to keep an eye on these areas of rain, particularly the initial one that's moving through tonight. Here we do have a weather warning, mainly across parts of Devon and Cornwall, parts of southwest England and also southern parts of Wales. So there's a chance that we could start to see around 40 to 60 millimetres of rain between 6 to 9 hours. So there is a chance that this could lead to some travel disruption, possibly even some localised flooding. So already it's starting to feel quite autumnal. We're already seeing that change in our weather compared to quite the long, dry, hot summer that we had. So let's take a look at those rainfall totals then. As we move our way through, because you'll see why we've issued that warning across parts of the southwest. You can see already those orange, those yellows, those red colours starting to push through. So widely, yes, we could probably see around 20 to 30 millimetres of rain. It's going to be through the early hours of the morning as well as that system drifts eastward. So if you are commuting to work on your way to school, it is not going to be the most pleasant start to the day, I'm afraid. But notice localised areas, there is a good chance that those rainfall totals really starting to tot up even within a 3-hour period. So quite heavy downpours of rain. So like I said, between 40 to 60 millimetres of rain is possible. But of course that rain is not just across parts of the south. It's set to be quite a wet and unsettled day across most of the country as that rain band starts to push through. So even parts of northern England, parts of Scotland, you'll start to catch some of those heavy downpours. So keep an eye on the warning across our website, our social media channels. We can tweak the warning when we get more information in, and there's a chance we could see perhaps another one issued, maybe not on Wednesday, but further ahead into the week as we expect a showery regime after that. So once again, those rainfall totals really starting to tot up through the week. So keep an eye out. At the moment, the only warning issued is that one across southwest England and southern parts of Wales. It's valid from around midnight tonight up until 2 p.m. tomorrow, but as I say, keep an eye out in case anything changes there. But even once that area of rain has moved through, notice these dotted areas of these higher rainfall totals. So that's where it's tending to be quite showery. That occlusion feature that I showed you earlier, just pushing in across parts of the south, so high ground in particular, where we could see rainfall totals increase, which is why there is a chance once again of another warning. So it's going to be wet and it's also going to be windy. Let's take a look at this graphic that I took earlier. This is from our UKV model, so a slightly higher resolution compared to our global model. It is in knots, but I'll try and do some conversions for you if you prefer miles per hour. But I've taken a screenshot from 9 a.m. on Wednesday, so when many people are travelling on their way to work or school. Really notice the wind strengths across the southern half of the country. So when that band starts to move through, there is a good chance that we could see some coastal gales, so very blustery around coasts, particularly exposed coasts. But even inland areas, notice, are pushing into the kind of 25 to 30, possibly 35 knot mark. So particularly if you're to the lee of any high ground here with that southwesterly flow, you could potentially get some quite gusty conditions. So it is not going to be the most pleasant of starts to the day. It's going to be wet and it's going to be windy, once again adding to the chance of some travel disruption. Now it's probably going to remain fairly breezy through much of the day. It'll be later on and as we head through into Thursday that those winds will start to decrease really. So it's mainly through Wednesday morning, but then it's still going to be quite blustery, but the strongest of winds are going to be during the first part of the day, and they'll spread their way eastwards along with that system that's moving through, with bringing in us those heavy downpours. So it's going to be wet, it's going to be windy on Wednesday, and then we've got quite changeable conditions for the rest of the week. But as I've already mentioned, by the time we reach Thursday, it's going to be a day of sunny spells and showers. So there will be some brighter weather ahead, but once again, these showers could turn quite heavy, possibly even bringing us some hail and some thunder too. So some quite heavy downpours expected. But as I showed you earlier, as that ridge of high pressure begins to build, actually Friday looks like a fairly decent day. Now notice there are still the odd shower dotted about, so if you're unlucky you might catch one. But across much of England and Wales, dry, settled, and some much lighter winds as well, so feeling a little bit more pleasant. But towards the northwest it is a different story. We've got that other system that I showed you just to the south of Iceland pushing another front. So once again more cloud, rain, some quite strong gusty winds, another chance of gales across the northwest of Scotland on Friday. So a little bit of a different story here, but you can see across the bulk of the country another fairly pleasant day, and Saturday's fairly similar too. So mostly dry, bright, but a chance you could just catch the odd shower if you are unlucky. Keep your brolly close, I would say. And then from Sunday onwards, we've of course got this rain starting to push its way through in from the west. Still some uncertainty there, so as I say, keep an eye on the forecast, but things will eventually start to turn more unsettled from the west. But as I mentioned, across the southeast, it's probably going to be a quite nice, pleasant, warm start to the day. So depending on how quickly this system moves through, depends how long you're going to see the best of the brighter weather. So of course, compared to the summer we've had, it's going to be a very different feel. We've had our summer statistics released. They were released yesterday, in fact, and this summer has been record-breaking. The warmest summer on record, beating the top spot of 2018. So the average temperature was around 16.10 for summer as a whole, beating our previous record in 2018, where average temperatures were around 15.76 degrees Celsius. And actually, in fact, if you take a look at our press release that we issued yesterday, a lot of Met Office studies are actually showing that a summer could be as hot or hotter than 2025. It's now 70 times more likely, 70, which is absolutely amazing, compared to what it would be in a natural climate without human-made greenhouse gases. 70 times more likely. That really struck me when I read that. So it was obviously warmer than average across much of the country. As I say, average temperature was about 16.10 degrees, but obviously it was quite persistent heat through much of the summer. Not only that, but we had 4 heat waves, which is just incredible. So many do kind of refer back to our record of 1976, a particularly warm summer, but that was just over a course of a few weeks, whereas this summer, the kind of heat, the warmth, the above average temperatures were quite prolonged, and it was all due to high pressure sticking around. We had quite blocked high pressure patterns through much of the summer. We also had a marine heat wave, which in turn can heat air temperature, and it makes that heat a little bit more long lasting. And in fact, the UK heat is, or the warmth of the UK temperatures are actually warming at around a rate of 0.25 degrees Celsius per decade, which when you first hear that, you think, oh, that doesn't sound like too much, but we can already see how it's having an impact on our weather and climate here in the UK. So summer 2025 is the warmest on record compared to summers. Now all the top 5 warmest summers have occurred since the year 2000, obviously knocking 1976 out of the top 5. Not only this, but across a large portion of England and Wales, it was particularly dry. Rainfall was below average. It was around 84% of the average for the UK as a whole. This follows our driest spring in just over 100 years, in fact. So summer too was also particularly dry, but not everywhere. Western parts of Scotland, northwestern parts of England were actually slightly wetter than average. And this matches quite nicely with our sunshine totals as well, where we saw around 110% of the average sunshine amount for the UK as a whole. But once again, where we saw those wetter than average conditions is where we saw either around average or slightly below average sunshine duration. So a very interesting summer, I'm sure one that we'll be referring to in the years to come. I'm not going to delve too deeply into the summer stats because we'll have another video which will be released tomorrow. That's Alex Burkill, and he's going to do another deep dive, it almost is, so you're essentially getting 2 deep dives this week, really into the summer stats to really look at what happened and why. So that will be coming out tomorrow along with his 10-day trend. So it's a double whammy of Alex Burkill tomorrow. The reason I'm not going to go into it now is it's because obviously we've had something very exciting happen this week, and we've had our new storm names released. And I was just as mad as everyone else that H was Hannah and not Honor. Maybe next year. Make sure you get your votes in next year for Storm Honor, okay? But even though we didn't get Storm Honor, we have got some really cool names on there. Personal favourite of mine is Fanula. I quite like that one. I also quite like Vubbo, but I'm a little bit worried about us getting to W this year. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but even so, Storm Vubbo does sound pretty cool, doesn't it? So our new storm names have been released. How exciting. It'll be interesting to see when we introduce the first one, Storm Amy. So yes, those were released yesterday, but what I really wanted to talk to you about was actually the storm name that's just passed, the storm season that's just passed, sorry. So obviously we had 6 storms with this previous storm season, ending at Storm Floris, quite a late storm in the season, a summer storm on the 1st of August, similar to the year prior where we had Storm Lillian. So what I did, I got in a special guest so that we could take a look at the storm season that's just passed. Hi Holly, welcome to this week's Deep Dive. Do you just want to start off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you do here at the Met Office?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I'm Holly Clement, so I'm head of the Warnings and Guidance area in the Met Office. So that's the forecasting teams that send out the severe weather warnings, the advisors that advise into emergency responders, and also Hazard Centre. So quite an interesting mix of teams and a lot of critical work this winter.
Yeah, and I think we're both similar in that we've only been doing our roles for just a few months, so we've been thrown into the deep end talking about this season's storms, if you haven't guessed already by what's on our screen. So we've been naming storms since about 2015, haven't we? Did you just want to go into why we decided to actually give storm naming a try?
Yeah, of course. So we've had storms, obviously, through our history in the archives. It isn't just the first time storms have happened since 2015. But to help us message and communicate the impact of storms and what impact that might have to the public, responders, and to help better sort of communicate our message around the risk of that storm and what impact it might have on people, we found that it really helps people connect to a name, and also it helps kind of then look back and compare other events and contextualising storms, which we'll be doing now, and comparing them to past events, helps think about, oh yeah, actually that storm did make an impact to me, and what did I do there? No, I might need to do that again. So it really helps us message and help people prepare, basically, and take action.
For sure, because there's definitely some storms this season which kind of stand out for me. I mean, Ashley being one of them, just because it was the first, it wasn't long until I started this job, and then Storm Ashley turned up out of nowhere. I remember Dara seeing all the red warnings come through, so that was, you know, a really, really busy time. So we're going to be talking about the storm season just gone. So yes, first storm, as I've just mentioned, that was Storm Ashley. Here it is on the satellite image. We can see a really impressive swirl of cloud as this system moved through into parts of the UK. Now, this storm was interesting because it underwent what we call explosive cyclogenesis. You might have even seen in the headlines, sometimes these are referred to as weather bombs. I'm going to try and explain what that is. So it's essentially when an area of low pressure in the Atlantic, it gets picked up by the jet stream. So the jet stream is the fast-flowing ribbon of air high up in the atmosphere, and it moves towards what we call the left jet exit of our jet stream. This is the cold side of the jet stream. And what happens in this area is that we undergo something called quite rapid deepening. So lots of air being lifted aloft very, very quickly. We see divergence aloft, which is when air starts to spread aloft high up in the atmosphere. And this means it needs to be replaced very quickly by winds at the surface. So you've all of a sudden got rapid winds moving up in a column of the atmosphere, and this is where these low pressure systems then start to undergo quite rapid deepening. So pressure really lowers at the surface, and it needs to lower by around 24 hectopascals or 24 millibars in around 24 hours for it technically to be explosive cyclogenesis. And this is exactly what we saw with Storm Ashley. In fact, I've got some facts here. So it went from 988 hectopascals to 952 in just 24 hours, and we've actually got it here on the synoptic chart. At this point, this is midday, Saturday the 20th of October. It's drawn on there as 959, and with lower pressure, the lower the pressure, essentially the stronger the storm, the stronger the winds. So really, this storm, it wasn't anything unusual. The surface winds were kind of normal for this type of storm, but it was really the wind gusts that we saw in higher sites.
Absolutely. You can see on the southern flank, the highest winds generally around the southern part of the low pressure system. And you've got the strongest winds coming in through sort of Northern Ireland, Northern England, but particularly those peaks in the high ground of Scotland.
So the Cairngorms, for example, that's 105 knots there. I think that was one of the peak gusts that we saw, and that's about 120 miles per hour. So it wasn't a totally unusual storm. It was the first one, so quite memorable for many. We did see some quite strong winds across the mountain sites, but in terms of rainfall, it was kind of typical for this type of storm moving through. But the next one, Storm Bert, we're going to talk about in a bit more detail. That's this one down here, because this was quite a significant storm, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we saw heavy rain through end of September, quite a lot of low pressure systems coming in, wetting things up. They weren't named storms. We did send national severe weather warnings out for those, yellow and amber. And then we worked through Storm Ashley, which obviously clearly had some rain as well. And then leading up into the Storm Bert situation, we had, you can't really see here, but we did have quite cold air ahead of that. And we had snow events, so we sent snow warnings out during the week in the lead up to Storm Bert. So we had snow across much of the UK actually, and holding onto high ground areas. So there were snow accumulations across the high ground of England, Northern England, Wales, Scotland and areas of Northern Ireland as well. So that was sort of the run up into the Storm Bert. And so that's where we see this low pressure coming in now. Heavy rain on this occlusion, and then quite intense rain along these cold fronts here. So that's where you sometimes see quite heavy convection. So we call quite intense rain over short periods of time. So I think some of the figures were 32 in the hour. So over a 6 hour, 3 hour period, we saw quite heavy rain on the back edge of that cold front, and that was seen here across these. That sort of pepped up these totals here. So we had long duration rain, but also quite intense bursts within the 6 hour period, which does tend to kickstart river response and the hydrological response in these areas. So we had a mix of snow, have strong winds, rain, and snow melt as well. So it's quite complicated. But in here you can see the rainfall totals here over the event. So over the storm. So here obviously 150 millimetres plus across Dartmoor, South Wales, Brecon Beacons, and obviously parts of the Lake District and Snowdonia as well.
And this one,
absolutely. So then through here, this is like the November averages. So this shows that over the long-term average that these areas do stand out here in the southwest and Wales, but also areas across Northamptonshire and North Oxfordshire as well. And those areas are very high compared to their average. And that's sort of what we saw then as a response to that in the rivers when we were working with our partners in the Environment Agency. They were able to sort of forecast the impacts based on that.
And it was a tricky one to forecast, wasn't it? Because as you say, it was the snow initially, then a storm coming through, the added snow melt as well as the heavy rain, the strong winds. It really was a multi-hazard event, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And I maybe as a member of the public, you would look at the warnings and be, gosh, this is a lot's going on here. What do I do? How do I act to this? And this is really hard. And it's one of the things my team, one of the teams consider as the forecasters issuing the warnings around how to make sure the warnings make sense to people and responders so that we can plan ahead. And this was a very, very busy period for the team in the operational teams forecasting and also for the advisors working with emergency responders. So very tricky. But we did send some forecasts out. So we had yellow rain and we got like an amber snow and ice. So we had a mixture of snow, ice, wind, rain and snow warnings there. So yes, a real mix. Multi-hazard is kind of what we call it, because there's a lot of things going on. So then how do we assess the impact of that? And so through this, we looked at, we have here snow accumulation. So we were forecasting quite detailed snow accumulations through these areas. And this is some of the guidance we share internally with our teams, 10 to 20 centimetres, above 200 metres, those sorts of things. Then we had rain forecast here as well. So we also had 100 to 150 millimetres expected across parts of South Wales and Dartmoor. And with that, we also had snow melt.
Yeah.
And that's really complicated to forecast and model. So the information that we gather from our flooding partners to inform our warnings, because our warnings are impact-based, can be really complex and tricky. So yeah, we were forecasting rain, and obviously a lot of this was part of the communication to the public and responders as well. Yeah. And obviously very windy, so you know, debris, lots of things that hazard. Absolutely, yeah. But we did send warnings out 4 to 5 days ahead. But some of the impacts we saw were really, a lot of flooding across South Wales. We had flooding across the Nene, and I think that was, Northamptonshire. So that was the area that we saw before that had very higher than average rainfall going into this. So, it had received higher than average rainfall going into this. So there were a lot of impacts across rivers, and also we had landslides in South Wales as well. So other hazards to consider and how that compounds into a bigger impact for those people.
Yeah. Exactly. I do remember this one. Obviously, as a presenter, you end up having to put all these weather warnings on your graphics. Sure. It makes for a much busier morning. But yes, I do remember, and it was like you said, really tricky to forecast with all sorts of different hazards associated with it. And then not long after that, I think it was a few days, wasn't it? We ended up having Storm Connell. So once again, not necessarily a very significant storm, but it came so soon after, and where we saw. So this is the synoptic pattern here. We can just see it to the south. This was named by the Dutch Met Service.
That's right.
Because it impacted
more the Netherlands. More.
Yeah. And then once again, further heavy outbreaks of rain in areas that had already seen quite a lot of rain from the 2 previous storms.
Absolutely.
So yeah, once again, we'll go through each of these. Storm Connell, as I say, not necessarily too impactful, but after Burr, after Ashley, and we were seeing heavy rain in similar kind of areas. I thought that one was worth a mention. Then after this one, we had Storm Dara, which I do remember this because I think I'd just become solo as a presenter, and all of a sudden we had a named storm, we had red warnings, and from a presenter's point of view, you end up having to do a lot more interviews, and you want to make sure you've got the information correctly to make sure you guys at home are aware of the latest warnings and the potential impacts. But what really struck me with this one, obviously we had so many warnings out, yellow, amber, and also red warning for western parts of Wales for wind. But not only this, but we also had some severe weather in the shipping forecast. So this mentions here violent storm force 11. And what's interesting is we do normally do these storm reviews. There was one for the previous storm season where it's Aidan and Will Lang talking about it, and I can't remember what storm it was for actually, but there was another red warning in the shipping forecast. I don't know if you remember, but I
think Aisha.
Yeah, Aisha. Yeah, I think that was it. And Will Lang actually said, it's very uncommon. It's quite rare actually to see this kind of warning in the shipping forecast. But this season we had it twice. We had it for Dara and also Storm Eowyn, which we'll come on to next. So yeah, this one was quite significant.
Yeah, very much so. And particularly, the wind, the rain element here, you can see we were amber for the South Wales area that experienced quite significant severe flooding from Storm Bert. So a lot of those areas are still sensitive to the rain. So we include that information in the warnings that we give. But for the wind, yes, very much. It was a major incident declared across West and Central Wales during this. There's a lot of trees down, and there was a real risk to life and also infrastructure in that area. The ability to them to respond to emergencies was really at risk. And this was the first time an emergency alert was sent for weather, actually, for the season. So we've been working, we work with the government around reviewing and how we message for severe weather. And so the emergency alert was used then. And I remember I was in South Devon, but I remember getting, because it just about clipped North Devon anyway.
Some people here got them, some people didn't.
And they're still ironing out how it works. But very much taking it seriously, because when there's a risk to life, that is what it means. And it was quite sobering coming back into work the next day, or seeing a lot of the impacts at home on the news. So very much a significant major incident for Wales.
Yeah, once again, with the wind and rain. We had, it was Berry Head in Devon. That was 83 knots was one of the max gusts. That's around 96 miles per hour. And that ended up being the highest December gust on record. And that broke a 30-year record. So not typical for this kind of storm after breaking a 30-year record, but yeah, really significant impacts in parts of the southwest. Also areas of Wales getting around 80, 81, particularly northwest Wales, knots, which once again is kind of around 92 miles per hour. But it was even inland areas. We had some areas of Cornwall, areas of Somerset, getting about 62 knots, which once again, I think that's around there.
Yeah, you've got this quite widely through the central area.
So even across kind of the central southwest. So yeah, really, really strong gusts associated with that. Not sure, did I have anything? Yeah, and rainfall once again, and similar, it's kind of being picked up in those similar areas, already saturated ground, and further heavy outbreaks of rain and strong winds.
Absolutely.
And I think, a few deaths associated with this storm. There was 2.3 million power outages, so really impactful storm after already having, some impactful storms before that. Okay, then the next one, I'm sure quite a few people remember, Storm Eowyn, which I think is here. So once again, area of low pressure here, it's marked on as 941 hectopascal, so a really deep area of low pressure just situated to the northwest, bringing in once again some strong winds, heavy outbreaks of rain. Anything significant that
one of the most powerful storms we've had in the UK. Very much so.
Lots of hazardous weather just beforehand as well.
Yeah, so we ran into, January over the Christmas period. It was quite, I don't know where you were, but it was quite settled where I was on the. Yeah, I was working it. It's quite settled to the first week of Christmas holidays, and then but during the New Year period, it was actually very busy operationally for warnings being issued. So some of you might be largely across England and Wales actually, but some of you might have seen like warnings pop up on your app or on the website or messaged about things, and there was a lot of rain, similar, obviously not storm but similar kind of multi-hazard with snow mixed with rain and snow melt, not wind so much, hence we didn't have any named storms during the New Year period and running up into early January, but it was very busy operationally, and there were some significant flood events across sort of central England, east of England, and the northwest of England as well. So that sort of like wetting up period and just showing the complexity of sometimes when we're sending warnings out when we've got, snow mix with rain, how complex that could be. But of course, this is, a really significant storm, one of the most powerful in the UK. I think for Northern Ireland, it was the most powerful since the Boxing Day storm in 1988. Very explosive deepening, as you just explained, from Storm Ashley was happening here as well. And that often happens for the UK because we're at the end of the jet stream across here in the Atlantic. So we often see that where the jet stream sort of slows here, it has we call an exit point if you're into looking at where jet streams are in the atmosphere. And that's why we often get the developmental, you've got low pressures out here, but they all develop and deepen as they come into the UK and then tend to decline as they go across into the sort of the Norway area. But this was an example of that here. Very, very strong winds generally. And
once again, multiple warnings associated with this, yellow, amber, and also red warnings across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, and similar to what we saw earlier. Also kind of hurricane force winds, red warnings in the shipping forecast.
Absolutely, hurricane force, and I think phenomenal sea state you've got there as well. So quite a lot of the information on this was around the coastal areas, the Irish Sea, and the impact that had on the coastal side of things as well. So yes, strong winds, but also if you're in these coastal areas, particularly sort of for Ireland as well actually. You can see here some of the advice that's given in the warnings around large waves, beach material being thrown, and phenomenal sea state. So not to go and watch it in the sea at the beach. It's very tempting, but really, there is a risk to life for this one as well. And another emergency alert was sent for Storm Eowyn. That was the second emergency alert that was sent for weather.
Red warnings are so important. Danger to life. I do remember advising people, not to kind of go out and take a look. But yeah, some really significant wind gusts we had through there. And not only this, but because we had all the kind of hazardous weather before, and then the storm with previous storms just before it, it's kind of looks like we're starting to see that really growing risk of multiple storms, one after the other, along with our kind of changing climate. But yeah, we can really see those strong wind gusts, particularly across the kind of northwest of the country here. And oh yes, we wanted to get. Oh no, we were going to change this, weren't we?
No,
we forgot.
This is a stronger wind. This is 80 knots.
Yeah. But if we had slightly, we can take a look at that later. But if we had a slightly lower wind gust value, it was around 70 knots. This was actually quite significant.
Yeah, Storm Eowyn was up here. Yeah, it's more than the Great Storm, and obviously lower than Boxing Day Storm, which is what I said there.
Yeah.
But yeah, for widely 70 knots or just above 70 knots, Storm Eowyn featured really significantly up in the ranks, the ranks of the storms.
Of the great storms.
Yes.
Yeah. And then of course we had Storm Floris, and here we are, we've got a satellite image. Once again, this satellite image, you can see the swirl of cloud there just situated to the northeast of Scotland and coming through across central and southeastern England. But this was relatively unusual because it was quite late in the season, a summer storm, but it's not totally uncommon. We had one the year prior with Storm Lillian, I think it was, at a similar time of year. But it kind of catches people off guard still, even though it's a chance. Obviously, it's the summer holidays, more people are out and about, so they tend to be not quite as strong, but sometimes more impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had seen quite a quiet spell, I suppose. If you think storm-wise and rain, we've had quite a dry, settled spring and early summer. It's been quite nice. And yeah, absolutely. You kind of think, oh gosh, storms are happening again. Oh, here we are. So yeah, very much. It can be more impactful in lots of ways because you've got a lot more people out and about. You plan your holidays, camping, towing your caravan on the road. Those sorts of things can become very risky. There's a lot more people travelling and more vulnerable sort of mobile populations, campsites, caravan sites, those sorts of things. So yeah, the impact of that is really important, and part of what we consider when we issue warnings and think about storm naming, particularly for, and this is a really good example of why that's so important. We, for the Friday ahead of the weekend, the forecasting team with the advisors, thought it was best to name this storm. Spoke to the Netherlands and met Erin in Ireland as well, and felt like it was significant enough to send to name this storm, Storm Floris. And we sent yellow wind warnings out at that point because of the confidence in the really strong winds. And then on the Sunday going into this, we then did issue an amber. And then this happened on the Monday and Tuesday.
And even before the storm naming, I remember I spoke about it on a deep dive in the Tuesday before we named it, an area of low pressure. But at the moment,
I listened back to that.
At least one person did that. But we weren't really sure. There was still quite a lot of model variability. But then I remember, I think it was Alex the next day talking about it in his 10-day trend, and then that was Tuesday and Wednesday, and by the Friday we had named it. So quite well forecast, and we were quite alert that something may potentially happen quite early on.
Yeah, very much so. We're forecasting into the medium range and outlook 24/7. We have forecasters doing that all the time, and it's just where it becomes significant enough and have those conversations around actually, and then the confidence obviously builds as you get more models coming out with that solution, looking at different solutions from different model centres as well. So
exactly.
Very much.
But yes, it was quite a severe storm. It was one of the most severe summer windstorms on record. We got to, I think I've got some wind gusts here. We did get to 82 miles per hour in Scotland, and that was the August record. It was a mountain summits did start to see around 100 miles an hour, so it's probably
you've got 108
knots. So Scotland, the Scottish August record was actually broken. So once again, those mountain sites really picking up the strongest winds across Scotland, at times Northern Ireland as well, particularly in the northwest.
Yeah, we did have a few kind of close reaches to some records for Northern Ireland during that period.
And just to finish off, it's sometimes kind of compared, we've recently compared Storm Florist. We had Storm Hector, didn't we?
Hector, yeah.
And which one was this?
This was July 1988.
Yeah.
So this is obviously before.
Yeah.
We started storm
you can
naming.
see how far we've come with our chart drawing.
Chart drawing. This is great. This is how we trained.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, get your coloured pens out. And
yeah. So this is 1988, July 25th, July 1988. You've got Storm Hector here in 2018. So that was one of the storms. And you can see the low pressures. 977, 971. I think 976. So not as deep as some of the low pressures you see with explosive cyclogenesis we see from Storm Eowyn and Storm Dara, but still very significant in terms of the impacts because it's the summer. But yeah, this is a pattern we see. Summer storms aren't that uncommon.
They just catch us by surprise
August
sometimes.
When the school holidays start, it tends to be quite bad weather. But at the moment we've been quite lucky earlier on in the summer, haven't we? So yes, so this is an example here of the type of storms we do get in the summer. So very much. And obviously last year we had Storm Lillian and we had more storms generally. But so something to note, definitely. Thank you.
A big thank you to Holly once again for joining us on this week's Deep Dive. It's always really interesting to take a look back at the weather that we've forecasted, particularly when we're taking a look at storms, and it'll be super interesting to see how many storms we get through this year. Now, of course, it wasn't just the storm names, it was also the summer stats. The press release is issued on our website, so if you want to delve deeper yourself into the summer just gone, do take a look at that. But as I've already mentioned, there is going to be another video tomorrow on YouTube with Alex Burkhill taking a look at why this summer ended up being so record-breaking. And if you want a bit more of a look ahead into the weather this week, particularly across the next 10 days, well, we've got the 10-day trend with Alex Burkhill tomorrow as well. And it doesn't end there. We've also got our Weather Studio live this Friday. So do make sure if you do have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments box below and we'll take a look at those for this week's Weather Studio Live. It's not actually going to be me, sorry to disappoint you. It's going to be Alex Deacon and Aidan back this week, taking you through all the questions that you might have for them. So thanks again for joining me this week. Make sure you have subscribed and liked this video, and I'll see you again very soon.